What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. I'm your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
And this is Motivation Monday. We are here to answer your questions, have some real talks about life and fitness, and share some of our favorite quotes. And we've started these episodes off by answering our primary question for this week. And this is an amazing one. This is one I get asked quite frequently, so I'm really excited to jump into this here. And the first question is, what are the best foods I should be eating for fat loss?
So this is a fantastic question. We got asked it on Instagram just the other day, and I wanted to start off by saying most people know what a healthy food is. So if I were to ask you what would you consider to be healthy, for the most part, you would have a lot of different things that would just come to the top of your head. And I know sometimes people like to overcomplicate it, so I did want to just share that as, if you were to sit down with a pen and paper, write down a bunch of different healthy options and what you believe to be healthy, you'd probably start off by writing chicken breast, a lot of different veggie options, maybe some nice whole grain options. You'd probably write down a lot of healthy whole foods that are just very minimally processed, and that's technically exactly what a healthy food is. You'd probably write down a bunch of fruits as well. So for the most part, in terms of just a healthy diet to help you with fat loss, I'm going to start off by saying you should be eating at least 80 to 90% of those foods, focusing on high quality protein. A lot of lean meats are fantastic, and especially for fat loss, I wanted to start by saying lean meats are great because it's going to help you keep the calories down, which will therefore help you lose fat. There are people out there who can have tons of steak and tons of, full fat ground beef and all that stuff, but usually that will take you out of the calorie deficit, which will bring you into maybe maintenance or a surplus because it's so heavy in fat and it's also heavy in calories. So really, as long as you're keeping a log of your overall total calorie intake, you're eating at least 1 gram per pound of body weight that you weigh. So if you weigh 170 pounds, aim to eat about 170 grams of protein, and you'll be in a really good spot there. And try to get as many foods that's going to fill you up as physically possible. And I like using the analogy of a Big Mac and fries. That's going to be over 1,000 calories. You're going to eat it and you're going to be probably craving more unhealthy foods. You're not going to be satisfied. There's going to be very little minerals and vitamins and micros. It's just going to give you really no benefits aside from maybe hitting a craving there. Whereas something like a bunch of different lean meats, maybe some nice brown rice with lots of different veggies, broccoli, different things, it's going to satiate you. It's going to offer so much more value. And you're probably going to get to the point where you're not even going to reach that calorie amount, maybe half of it, and you're going to be absolutely stuffed. So I would really try to fill my day up with as many of these options as possible while still incorporating a little bit of fun food, whether that might be a soft serve ice cream cone you may be craving, because you can still absolutely have that and it does help you with the sustainability side of things. But I'm sure Josh has a lot of great options as well, and these are just my go-tos and what I wanted to start by saying.
Yeah, even in this question, it's very tempting to say, if I eat this, I'll get abs or I'll look great or I'll lose fat, but that's not the reality. Once again, we're going back to that SECO from a few weeks before. So that is calories in versus calories out. And that is what ultimately will result in fat loss. It's not per se the foods you're eating. Where the foods really matter is they become part of the whole, which is your calories for the day. And to Kyle's point, if you're having things that are very caloric, that are very high in fat, very high in carb with not as much nutritional benefit, it's going to be very hard to lose fat because you're not going to be sated, meaning you're going to be really hungry, you're going to have less energy, your hunger signaling is going to be a mess because you're going to be more hungry from those foods you had, like that Big Mac meal example. However, I think it's easy to say there are foods that really do help with fat loss, like obviously eating a lean chicken breast. It's very plain, it's very boring, it's not very caloric, it's very dense in protein. It's going to supply you a lot of energy and keep you really full. So yes, in a sense, that does help with fat loss, but it's not that food that is actually making you lose fat, but it actually is better to obviously implement more chicken and veggies. Like if I said you can eat as much as you want today, but you can only eat chicken, veggies, and brown rice, chances are you wouldn't be able to go over your calories because you get very bored of it, first of all. But it's very hard to fill up, especially if we're not talking with a ton of butter, a ton of oil. We're talking very plain here. It would be very, very hard to go over your calories. Whereas if I just said eat anything you want today, eat as much as you want, chances are that could get pretty dangerous. You go off the deep end, you could go off the rails, and that could get real bad real quick. So that's where it's really important to not have that misconception that certain foods are going to be the result of you losing fat. And all too often, I'm sure you'll relate to this, there's probably a time where you did lose a lot of fat and you were eating a lot of a certain food. And maybe you're eating a ton of fish for dinner, you're having a lot of chicken breasts, or you're only doing smoothies. And it's really easy to equate that food as the reason, like I said, but the chances are you're eating something more plain, more basic, or you were cutting out something previously that was filling up your diet with a lot of calories. And by doing that, you put yourself in a deficit, you lost that weight. And where this gets tough is when you get outside of these normal situations. That's where people will usually rebound that weight. And it's very similar with like meal prep services. They can be fantastic because the days you have them, maybe you have them 4 or 5 days of the week, they're phenomenal. Then the weekend comes and you gain all that weight back. So that's where you really want to avoid these cycles. And that's where we highly recommend tracking your foods. This is the best way to stop that cycle. And if you've gone through this pain point before, this is how you fix it. You track your foods. You still aim to eat these better foods. You follow the 80-20 rule, which is 80% whole hearty foods, and then 20% you're having more fun items. So you can have that sustainability. You can have that balance. You can be realistic within it. And with that, though, I will say the foods in my diet that I find make dieting easy, that I use even when I'm not dieting, that I find just help with my composition. They help me maintain muscle and have minimal fat on my physique. I really do love fruits. I find fruits are a fantastic treat. And yes, a fruit isn't as good as ice cream or a chocolate bar or a candy bar, whatever it may be. But I find with sweets, the more you have, the more you crave. And the same with those salty, delicious snacks like chips and other things. They're engineered to make you eat as much of it as you physically can. So it's a hard battle to win because they're delicious. Snack foods in particular are really easy to grab. So I find working against that. And like yesterday for a fun treat, I went ahead and I had some watermelon. I loved it. Once again, it's a lot easier to listen to hunger signaling. And I was kind of the point where like, I don't want any more of this watermelon. I had about like 250 calories of it, which was still fantastic. And that was still a lot of watermelon. Whereas I'd have a hard time cutting myself off if I had like a huge bag of Skittles or something like that. So these are definitely things to think about, but I love fruit. I love Greek yogurt in the morning. I've actually upped how much I'm having to 300 grams because I found I was getting a little hungry midday. And 300 grams of Greek yogurt, I can't remember. I think it's about 200 calories, maybe a little bit less, but it is so filling. Like by the end of it, I'm like, oh, please, no more. And that's only 200 calories. But if I was having jam and toast, I could have 1,000 to 2,000 calories of jam and toast super easy. So that's where you need to be smart in the building blocks of your day and really say like, am I eating foods that are supporting my goals? I love jam and toast. I would rather have that than Greek yogurt every single day. I think that's delicious. Peanut butter and jam, also delicious, but I reserve these things more for like a treat because I know if I do this every day, I'm going to be really hungry by lunch. I'm going to be in a bad position where I'm going to be wanting something faster. My protein is going to be off for the day. So that's where using Kyle's tips and my tips really does go a long way. And then otherwise past that, I always try to have like a lean meat, lots of veggies. I love whole grains. Like carbs are absolutely phenomenal for building muscle. This is a whole side topic. Once your protein and calories are hit, carbs are a phenomenal anabolic source towards building muscle. But obviously you want to use them in the right context. But I find whole sources, whole grains of carbs are fantastic. If you're in a heavy bulk, you don't necessarily need to go for the whole grains, but I could get super into the weeds with this. But in general, any food could be phenomenal for fat loss if it fits within your criteria. I love burgers when I'm dieting. I find it's very easy for me to have 2 burgers for dinner. Hits my protein. Yes, there's a little bit of fat in there. I'll do 100-calorie buns. Would I advocate people have burgers to lose fat? Absolutely not. But for me, that assists my goals with the fat loss. I find it's tasty, it's enjoyable. I'm happy just having those 2 burgers with no sides. I get a really high protein burger that's lower in fat. I do that less calorie dense carby bread, and the rest of my day is super positive and dense with vegetables, other proteins, lower in fat, and it hits my personal macros. But that's where I'm entirely different for you, and you really need to curate and works what works for you and the culture and the situations you're in. So once again, I could go off, but I'm sure Kyle has something to add.
Yeah, what's cool is Josh and myself could both reach our fat loss goals like very easily, having completely different foods. Like if he loves his Greek yogurt and I say, hey, I really like oatmeal and I have protein oatmeal and he has Greek yogurt, awesome. He loves his chicken, broccoli, rice bowl for lunch and I wanted to have lean ground beef and maybe, sweet potato with some sort of other veggie, let's say zucchini. We can still both, once again, simultaneously reach our goals. And that's what's so cool about this whole eating and still getting your results is like you have so much freedom to make the decision as long as you hit your calorie goals and everything else we listed is being met. Now, of course, where it gets really challenging is, like Josh said, all the temptations and the just different options out there, the marketing, the way these foods out there are designed to just help not help us with our fitness goals, but actually hurt us. Even going out to eat, the amount of butter that's being tossed on there. There's lots of different things that you think you are on a good trajectory, but because of all these external factors, discipline can be really challenging and it's really hard to get the results you're striving for. But the other thing was like a lot of these things have many different aspects in common. So I'm just going to use 3 different breakfast examples that I've rotated over the last few years. So Greek yogurt with some chia seeds, hemp seeds, and then also just lots of berries. You can have protein oatmeal with similar concept, or even a smoothie. So all of them are great options, right? They're high in protein. There's lots of vitamins and minerals. They can be quite filling. Obviously, the smoothie will be a little bit less filling because it gets mixed together. And there's just so many different great things added. And it's also quite low calorie if you wanted to make it that. It can be 300 to 400 calories and be very filling. So when you're designing a meal, when you're choosing food options, like really trying to check off all of these things is super beneficial. Now, if let's say tomorrow I decide that my willpower is drained and I want to go grab a chocolate chip muffin and croissant, likely none of that's going to be met. It's going to be higher in calories. It's not going to be filling. There's going to be very little protein. It's going to be just filled with a bunch of different ingredients and whatnot. So not saying that you can never have that, but I just want to give you an example of the comparison of what these foods do for you, how it leaves you feeling. And even when you think about it as well, if you go down that route, it'll also force you or cause you to make bad decisions for the rest of your day when you start off with something like that. I just want to use that as an example and a comparison as to why some foods may actually be holding you back. And that example is something that I know holds a lot of people back, especially the first decision of the day. So just a random thought there.
Yeah. And we want to show you how to succeed for life. And if you've lost weight before and put it back, this is often the reason why, as to what me and Kyle were saying. It's because you didn't understand and you just defaulted to that thing that worked, but you didn't have that deeper context. So that's where we try to go a few levels deeper past just the question of saying, here are the foods I like to eat. And I know it's easier for us and for you just to hear the foods we like to eat and say, oh, I'll eat more Greek yogurt, but you really got to get to the base of your problems here so you can see long-term change. And it really makes it that much easier because there are days where maybe I'm 20-80, like 20% healthy, 80% unhealthy, really tough situations, but you can still navigate them. Like I could hit my macros at McDonald's today absolutely fine. Is that most optimal for my health? Absolutely not. If that was my only context where I was stranded on an island with a McDonald's and it's all I could eat, I could absolutely maintain my body composition goals and get that done. Obviously, I'd be a little bit hungrier, but these are the skills where you can learn to navigate this and still have success in any situation. So that was our primary question of the day. But now we're going to jump into our quotes. Myself and Kyle love quotes. They really get us thinking. And I'm actually really inspired by mine and I'm pumped to start it. So even I love watching motivational videos and sometimes it just feels good hearing people screaming in your ear, firing you up to go do something. But I really spent the time to think about something. And the quote I heard that I hadn't really taken more thought to in the past was that suffering has no expiration date. And I've always heard that. And I've always heard, oh, that sounds fantastic. Suffering has no expiration date. But when I really thought of it, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty deep. And even today with my squats, this was another theme I had on my mind every week. It's like a mental battle of having to go in there. I've been lifting now well over 10 years, 12 years. I don't even remember what it is now, but I still suffer. I still every set want to flinch and give out or put less on the bar or not do all my sets or whatever it is, try and not go as deep. And instead, like the suffering, there's never a point where you've made it where everything's going to be just rainbows and butterflies and simple or a position in your physique where you've dieted, you look fantastic and you don't need to work out anymore. You don't need to eat healthy. Any place you get will require consistent work. And I think understanding this quote could be a good key for yourself and maybe even people that the concept of there isn't just going to be a 12-week little cut and you're going to look good and it's going to be done. Like fitness really does need to be intertwined within your life because you will always need to go to the gym. You will always need to stay healthy. You're always going to have to stay active. You're always going to have to eat better. And I know that sounds tedious and it sounds horrible and you're like, oh, but that's where you need to find that position of balance. And if you're doing extreme things, like even someone we know is trying to cut out all carbs and they're just cutting out everything, there's a chance you'll see success with that because, as we described earlier, you'll be in a big deficit and you're going to feel good and you're going to say, I've made it, I've done it, I'm 10, 20 pounds down. And then all that's going to come back as you go back to your lifestyle. And that's where fitness needs to be part of your lifestyle. And even something I wanted to add on top of this quote is, and this is an analogy I liked, is there's a price tag to your success and you just need to keep paying it, because that price tag will always be there. There's not like a point where you're like, oh, I've done it. And my example, and this was an analogy I thought would be quite helpful, is we've all been to a Costco, we've all been to a grocery store, we spent that dreaded $400 and we'd be like, oh my gosh, okay, but I'm stocked up forever. I'm never going to need groceries. A week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, and you have nothing. And you're like, what the heck? It's very much the same with fitness. So you need to keep getting those groceries. You need to keep showing up. There will never, as much as you want, and that effort can still be incredible. It can still lay you up. It can still be a great foundation. But this quote really just made me think, and even just the concept, like I was saying, that nothing easy is worth doing, because it's these hard things like those squats. As much as I'd love to skip my workout and sit and watch the Olympics all day, I'm going to feel so much worse from that. I'm not going to challenge myself. I'm missing out on that sense of accomplishment I got from doing those squats, the endorphins that came, the even just telling myself, wow, you can do hard things, you can challenge yourself through it. So this quote really hit me. And that's from David Goggins. And it's something like I've heard him say 100 times. And I think even one other extra thought I had on top of this, I know I'm saying a lot, but it's just the concept of actually thinking through what's said and really being present and really trying to understand and see how things apply to you, because it's easy to gloss over things that could be really powerful movers in your life. Even with this podcast, maybe just background noise partially, but like look for those gems, look for those golden nuggets. But once again, suffering has no expiration date.
I love that. And even I feel like back when we were, doing in-person training, like I'd even have some people say like, oh, it's easy for you. Like, you're in the gym all day, like you're a trainer. And then, as we have a little more free time, just doing fully online coaching, like you would always hear things like, oh, well, it's, you have to, it's part of your, your business. And then, I'd always hear different things, even just sometimes, people probably thinking like, oh, because we're stronger and we've been doing it for longer, like it's going to be easier because we've built up that strength. But like the truth is, and the reality is that there will always be those challenging times. Like Josh said, like even myself to this day, you'd think that I just walk in there on a leg day or, a heavy deadlift day or whatever. And I'm just like, man, like this is the best thing ever. I'm so excited for it. And sometimes I have to hype myself up a little bit, but the reality is that you're going to have to go through those tough times. And I really don't think there's a point where no matter who you are and how much you've built up your mindset and your discipline and all that great stuff, you're not just going to always be walking in and just be like, oh, well, I'm so pumped for this. And yeah, I wanted to share that with you as well. And I know Josh had some great points there, because I feel like sometimes people are just, with that mindset of like, oh, I'm not motivated, so, wait until I'm motivated. But it's like, well, neither am I. I'm just getting it done because I have to, right? But I thought that was great. It's funny, I have a quote about suffering as well. I was listening to a Ryan Holiday video this morning. He was talking about the 12, some rules for life, just on stoicism. And it said basically, rule number 3, he had said was, don't suffer from imagined trouble. And then this was from Seneca, who is a philosopher. And he said, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. We suffer more in our own imaginations than in reality. So this is more so a bit of it's more of a mindset thing that I wanted to talk about here was, we all have those moments where we just constantly put scenarios in our head and where we overthink potentially. And it's just, you end up suffering way more. So I know it's a very hard exercise to do, but I just really want to encourage you, no matter what's happening, and, just try not to think about it as much, as easy as it is. A lot of times, like let's say you have to tell your boss something a week from now and you just build up so much in your head. You don't sleep as much. You keep putting it off and it's just eating away at you. And when in reality, you just may have to pull the trigger and do it, or just try to really focus on changing your mindset to not think about that thing constantly over and over and over again. And, I'm definitely guilty of being an overthinker. And I think like, whenever I catch myself, I realize like, what am I doing here? Like, what's the point? It's not worth constantly keeping it in my brain and constantly just like, defeating myself when in reality, I can't really do anything about it right now. And I thought this was just a very good mindset shift, especially because I know a lot of people who can do stuff like this, and you don't realize how much it's eating away at you when in reality, it's not giving you any benefit. And I'm all for thinking about things. I'm all for taking a piece of paper and writing things down, what's on your head, working through scenarios. I think that's great. But when you're putting yourself through unnecessary, I guess you could say, suffering for the point of just not really getting any benefits, it's a different type of suffering that Josh was talking about there with the gym and putting in that work. But I just wanted to use this as my quote today, and hopefully it resonates with you in some way or another.
Yeah, and we've spoken before about the concept of choose your hard. You can have a hard life by being inactive and having your muscles all go to waste, by eating super healthy, being overweight and limiting your movement and having a lot of health issues. Or you can choose your hard by battling it out in the gym 45, 60 minutes each day and getting a workout in, feeling those endorphins, feeling sweat. And even that concept that suffering is universal language. Like, although suffering sounds horrible, I think calculated suffering where you're like, okay, I'm going to go through a bit of a challenge where I'm going to get off this couch, I'm going to go on a walk. It feels fantastic, goes a long way. It removes that flinch for when you have to make a hard decision at work or you need to get something done. So really choose your suffering and choose your hard. And once again, I think doing it in healthy amounts and balance, it really feels phenomenal to actually go about that. And that was one extra thing I wanted to include on top. But what other thoughts do you have this week, Kyle? Anything else?
Yeah, it was funny. I had to choose between the quotes. I had both of them. This was another one I came across from a video. It was, where focus goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, whatever you're focusing on grows. So I've shared this quote maybe a couple months ago or whatnot, but I just think that wherever, similar to what I was saying about not like overthinking, not forcing yourself to suffer with just like all your thoughts that you have in the top of your head, is just like when you focus on something, like it is absolutely incredible. It's just like where your energy will go and just how that can benefit you. And just a friendly reminder, when you're focused on just being a better person, just hitting the gym more, eating healthier, like, energy is just going to be flowing. Like it's absolutely incredible at how that can transfer over into your day-to-day life, your mindset, your other experiences with other people, and just, your energy there. So yeah, just a random kind of side quote / thought that I had, but that's all I really have for today.
Yeah, we've shared this on our threads before, but a good day can be simple: a good meal, good time with friends, a walk, a workout, getting to bed and having a great sleep. Like, I think 99% of us would agree that would just be a phenomenal day. And like, it's easy to overcomplicate it and really make it way harder than it needs to be. But look at those fundamentals, know what makes you feel better, even those things that are hard to do. Like, never regretted a workout when it's done. I've never regretted a walk when it's done. I've never regretted choosing a healthier meal over something quick and easy. So make that hard decision, get over that flinch and get the benefit. But now we're going to jump into a client who has been crushing it, who's been seeing results. Who do we got this week?
So this week we have Hayley, and she's been consistently crushing it with Coach Armando. She sent a few photos from her trip, and she's from Australia, which is super cool. We are very far away from her, but it's absolutely amazing at how she's been able to just crush it with the support of Armando, with having everything customized, obviously in very different time zones, which is fantastic. But she sent some photos from one of her trips where she just like is in a great spot. She's super happy. We'll share the screenshot that she also had mentioned, just about how she's feeling within this whole journey. And I think it's so incredible when clients send like photos of them outside of the gym as well, where it's like you can tell the confidence you're in a whole different spot. Your energy is awesome. You're able to enjoy a drink or two, or a bachelor party or bachelorette, or like whatever the scenario is. I know summer right now, there's a lot of fun stuff going on. There's barbecues, there's get-togethers, and all that great stuff. So what's really cool is she's put in a lot of work behind the scenes, and we have actually shouted her out in the past, but the main thing about this whole fitness journey is it's a never-ending, just ongoing process where we're constantly trying to be better and optimize. And even Armando shared quite a few things where, he started incorporating more form checks with her to improve her technique and her lifts. Even just, a more even within the workout side of things, just tailoring it even more in depth to the muscle groups she wanted to bring up. And there's so many things, obviously keeping her active every day with a step count, mixing in some higher intensity cardio sessions on her rest days. Like, there's been a lot of great stuff that's helped her go from good to great. And the biggest thing I wanted to stress here is that the situation may never be perfect. There may be trips or maybe whatever the scenario is, but I know there's so many people right now that think there's going to be a specific date where they're going to be fully ready. September is going to be here. I'm going to travel less. That's going to be my time. September is going to come. We're going to push it to October because there's that one little work trip that someone brought up on you. Maybe your son's birthday is in October and you're thinking after that and all the celebrations, November is going to be the time. If you're putting it off, you're just doing yourself no favor. And that's why we wanted to support you and be there, because we will tell you the hard stuff that you need to hear. And I guarantee your results. And I promise you, when you put in that work and you commit, no matter how hard your situation is, no matter how many night shifts and trips and, how social you are, like, we will get you there. Absolutely guaranteed. And I just really encourage you to send us a message with the keyword fat loss to the Instagram, Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT, and I can't wait to change your life.
We get it. Like when we started our fitness journey, Kyle mentions all the time how he'd only eat chicken breasts and vegetables, and he'd feel immensely guilty if he'd go to a party and go off of that. I remember trying to do crunches every single day excessively, do cardio till I couldn't. I remember just only eating healthy foods and being scared. I remember feeling horrible for having a bag of chips and being off that, and feeling so good when your weight's down and then seeing it come up and feel so lost. Like, these are all very avoidable feelings, and it really comes down to knowledge, systems, and just higher level accountability. Having someone on your side to steer you the right direction, to stop you from sabotaging yourself, is so important. And just going off of everything else we said today, like, if you're not seeing the results you should be seeing, you need to make a change. Kyle always says nothing changes if nothing changes, and we'd love to change that for you by having you become a member in our program. And this fat loss promo is a perfect time to do it. So definitely be sure to shoot us that message, because you deserve it. And me and Kyle look forward to helping you. So once again, fat loss to our Instagram at Colossus Fit, COLOSSUSFIT. But for our second question of the day, we have, what is the best and fastest way to gain muscle and strength? You guys are awesome. So we appreciate that you're awesome at the end there. But what would you say, Kyle?
Yeah, any compliments. I mean, you guys mean the world. Like, we just want to say thank you so much. I shared the other day, we were, and on a side note, we were at the Apple store picking up some new MacBooks, and it just brought me back to 12 years ago when we used to just put our YouTube channel and like on all the laptops and just try to get some more views. And now to know that so many of you tune into our YouTube, our Instagram, you're asking questions. Like, I'm like, is this even real? Like, very grateful for all of you. So thank you for that compliment as well. Just a random side note. My first answer here is, I mean, as much as I'd love to build muscle fast, quick, all that stuff, it will take time. Like, gaining muscle is definitely a harder and slower process than losing fat. Like, if you wanted to get lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks, probably wouldn't be fun, probably wouldn't be ideal, but you could definitely get it done. Of course, you will lose muscle within that process, but you can lose that weight. If you say, hey, I want to gain 20 pounds of muscle or whatever it is in a short amount of time, it's going to be really, really hard. You likely will not be able to do it. And so my first tip is not to discourage, but it's really to stick to it for a prolonged amount of time, especially building muscle, building strength. Like, give it a good 6+ months. And the reason I want to say this is because I know a lot of people who say they want to build muscle and then like they are constantly going through cuts and they're going through fat loss phases and then they're worried about getting their abs back. And it's a very tough process. And that's why I did want to mention even having that accountability is huge, because we'll tell you what you need to do. And even some of my clients will kind of want to go a different route, but I'm like, no, I know this is your goal. So we're going to stick to it for this amount of time. We're going to overload with the volume and the workouts for this period of time. Here's the calorie plan. So it's very helpful to know that there's someone who's not emotionally attached taking care of that. But I see so often someone, just, hey, I'm going to commit to it. They're 3 weeks into a slight surplus. They, maybe just feel a little heavier or whatnot. They see the scale go up 2 pounds and they're like, well, it's time to diet. I'm going to do a 1 to 2 week diet. And then it's just a constant up, down, up, down, up, down. And I do see a lot of females go through this, unfortunately. And, with this goal, like, the main things that need to be taken into consideration is that you should be in a slight surplus. So if your maintenance, and this is something you have to play around with, but if your maintenance is 2,000 calories, so that's where that's where you maintain your weight. You don't lose weight and you don't gain weight. You should be a couple hundred calories over that. So let's say 23 to 2,500 at least. And if you wanted to do more in terms of a surplus, you can go up to 3,000. You'll put on a bit more fat, but it will be a bit of a quicker process. And that's another side note, is like, if you are looking to gain weight fat in terms of muscle and strength, you're looking to gain it faster, the bigger surplus you go into, it will make it a little bit easier. And I've done some experiments myself where I would gain way more weight than I probably should have to see how much muscle I would gain. And it was definitely much faster than just like a slow lean bulk. So as long as you're in a slight to large surplus, you're in a good spot there. Now, obviously following a dedicated training program is absolutely huge. But the one thing I want to say past the training program, because you always hear us talk about it, is you really need to be challenging yourself in the gym, especially with, strength. So many people say they're trying to build muscle, they're trying to get stronger, and they're leaving so much left in the tank. Like, for example, heavy set of squats. You say, hey, I'm pushing myself, but you have like 8 reps left in the tank. You're never going to get to the point where you're pushing yourself enough. And it's not to say like go kill yourself in there and just always be going to failure on deadlifts, but it's like, if you think you have like 2 left in the tank, you probably have 5. Like, that's how most people operate in the gym. So I really encourage you to push yourself, challenge yourself, and do it for a certain amount of time, and you'll be in a really good spot.
Yeah, gaining muscle and strength really just comes down to being consistent, actively looking for your flaws. Like, if you're not giving it your all in your sets, you're not at your RARs, you're not doing those hard movements, that is the easiest way to actually gain strength and to be patient within it. A lot of strength just comes from improving your biomechanics and getting more efficient at movements, and then obviously gaining more muscle will further help you put on more strength. But I think Kyle popped that one off, and one of the most underestimated parts of gaining muscle and strength efficiently and faster is to be in a bulk, is to be in a surplus. Obviously, the degree of that, the downside is a little bit of fat gain. Like, if I want to gain as much muscle as possible, I'd need to be pretty okay with also pairing that with a good amount of fat. And that's where these dedicated bulking phases can be really beneficial. Obviously, the downside is you need to be really determined and comfortable with taking off that fat afterwards. I also do find it can be a bit of an adjustment. If you're 10, 20 pounds heavier than you're used to being, it can be a little bit uncomfortable being in your skin. So these are where you need to really understand what you want, what you're comfortable with doing. And that's where like a lean bulk could be a better approach for you. But if you're someone who's like, I just want to maximize the muscle, heavy bulk, training hard, really making sure to get enough protein, those are all going to be your best friends. Now for our third question, any good alternatives to barbell squats? My knees aren't that great.
Yeah, so good question. And we hear different things like this in different variations, such as, what's a good alternative for bench press? My shoulders aren't great, or whatever it is. We've heard it all many different times from, friends of ours, but also just the community as well. So I wanted to start off, instead of just giving you a bunch of different exercises to try, I really encourage you to sit down and think about why that is and actually come up with a game plan to fix that. I know it may sound like just it's not as much fun or not as ideal, because it is fun to just like look for a variation and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to address it and I'm going to go do some goblet squats. And while that is probably a good alternative, I find that it is potentially more, I guess joint friendly in this case, and you will be using a lot less weight and it's front loaded, and I think it will be a great alternative. But at that point, it's just, especially if you're younger, like I know some people who are, just low 20s, like, mid 20s, low 30s, and they're having all this pain and all this discomfort, but they'll never address that problem that's at hand. They won't really go see a specialist. They won't really find those movements where it's like, it's going to strengthen the muscles around the knee. And there's so many different great alternatives. The more that you strengthen your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads in a joint friendly way, like these are things that will really help on top of, just some potential expert who will give you some good things that you should be doing. So I did want to start by saying that instead of just saying, oh, go do all these different exercises. But that's going to be my first and most important thing, because once again, it's just not fun if your knees are killing you and you just have to, it's not that you have to be doing barbell squats. Like, it is a great movement and you can overload and they're intense. And like, to me, they're the king of all exercises. They are absolutely fantastic. So don't get me wrong. Like, you don't have to be doing that. But at that point, if it's just constantly bothering you, it's like, well, why is it going to bother me? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to transfer over into other movements? And I really encourage you to address it head on instead of looking for the alternatives. However, goblet squats are great. I do think that single leg movements, such as lunges or Bulgarian split squats, can potentially feel pretty good, but a lot of it will just come with trying it out. I think some people enjoy front squats, and especially hack squats. I find those are a lot more friendly. The hack squat machines, like there's a lot of cool ones out there, but it really comes down to what you're mainly struggling with, and also like the load that you use within it. And it will just come with a lot of trial and error there, if that makes sense. But we made a reels recently on just like 6 different different squat options, which like I absolutely love, because to me, squatting is one of the greatest things in whatever form you do, whether it's the barbell squat, the goblet squat, if you want to go Smith machine squat, Bulgarian split squat, hack squat, like belt squats are really fun. But to me, they're absolutely fantastic. And that was a great question.
Yeah, Kyle crushed it there. Definitely be sure to take advantage of squats in whatever form you do. And obviously building up to having a really good clean barbell squat is absolutely fantastic. And there are just so many benefits there for reasons, like lots of great reasons. And obviously to build stability, to build the strength, build the comfort, to have that free motion is so important. You don't need to just jump right there. Like Kyle said, obviously working through those variations, building that strength, getting that comfort, and learning how to move on those planes is so essential for everyday life as well. But though that is our episode for today, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. And we want to encourage you, if you're ready to get the results you deserve, to work one-on-one with us, to stop struggling, to finally lose fat, build muscle, and build a body you've always been proud of, and to learn how to do that for the rest of your life, all you need to do to make that happen, you got to do that first scary thing, and that's message us on Instagram. Let me and Kyle do all the heavy lifting, all the hard work for you. So go ahead and message us that on Instagram. Thank you for tuning in today. Peace out.